roll off for who goes first now.
Yep. This is going to matter a lot.
It will. Fuck.
Nice.
Hey, so I'm going to start this video with a little bit of a hot take. Warhammer? It's kind of hard to get into. Oh, not the reaction I expected to get from that. Oh, God. Oh no. Oh, God, I'm sorry. I take it back. I take it back! But for real, Warhammer has always had an issue with getting people to play the actual game. Most of this is due to how Warhammer has had a fairly high barrier to entry compared to stuff like Dungeons & Dragons or Magic the Gathering, and it isn't really hard to see why. Warhammer requires a lot more out of its players than D&D or Magic. I mean, you can't really improv your way through a game of 40k, and armies don't come immediately ready to go straight out of the box like Magic's cards do. So in order to get new people into the game, you kind of have to introduce them to it in a way that doesn't feel massively overwhelming to them straight out the gate. Which is why I think skirmish level games are an excellent entry point for newcomers. Now, skirmish games are nothing new to the world of tabletop gaming or Games Workshop. The first of GW's skirmish games that was explicitly designed as a skirmish game was 1995's Necromunda. Necromunda took players away from the battlefields of the far future and down into the grimy, disgusting gang warfare of Necromunda's Underhive. Necromunda was far more focused on individual gang members, with tables for equipment and the cash it took to buy them. Gang members were also meant to level up and become stronger the more fights they had, so Necromunda was pretty heavy on its RPG elements as well. Necromunda seems to be the one that GW liked the most out of all its early skirmish games, as it got a reboot, and recently a second edition teased at Adepticon. The same can't be said for Gorka Morka, a skirmish game centered entirely around warbands of orcs fighting for resources. The game was really similar to Necromunda, and that's because it was originally pitched as an expansion for Necromunda, but with added rules for things like vehicles, which, oddly enough, is actually quite similar to what happened with the Necromunda Ash Waste expansion for the most recent edition of the game. The difference is that Gorka Morka was all orcs all the time, baby. If it wasn't big, green, and mean, then it didn't have rules. I mean, technically speaking, you could play as human tribes, but I mean, those guys are cosplaying orcs, so it doesn't really count. The last of these old skirmish games was 1999's Mordheim, and the first one of these actually made for Warhammer Fantasy instead of 40k. Set during a period of civil war in the Empire, Mordheim saw warbands of mercenaries battling each other for Weirdstone in the titular city of Mordheim. The game originally only had rules for the Empire, Chaos, Undead, and the Skaven were also there because they love to show up wherever petty dickery may be found. Later on, rules would be added so that orcs, goblins, dwarfs, and elves could also plunder the damned city and bash each other's heads in for glowy rocks. But in my opinion, the best skirmish game that GW has ever made, and the one that's the easiest to get into, is their most recent one, Kill Team. Kill Team is a game all about special operations and smaller firefights between the vast armies of the 41st millennium. It is one hell of a good time, and I like it a lot, and we're going to dive into why I like it so much and why I think you should play it. So gather round the fire, get a warm cup of hot cocoa, and let Papa Zosh regale you with tales of why Kill Team is GW's best game. One of the more obvious benefits to Kill Team is that it probably has one of the lowest barriers to entry out of all the games that GW makes. It's no secret that Warhammer is an expensive hobby. It's certainly not the most expensive one out there, like Magic the Gathering can get absurdly, insanely expensive if you let it, and the money that I've spent during Steam sales makes the money I've spent on Warhammer look like pocket change. But Warhammer has a stigma of being very expensive, a stigma that certainly isn't unearned. Asking someone to spend $60 on a box of Space Marines instead of a brand new video game is kind of a hard sell. Asking them to repeatedly spend that $60 and then still assemble and paint the models is a nearly impossible sell. Yeah, Warhammer isn't just expensive, it's a commitment. A fully painted army is a beautiful thing to behold, but actually painting those models can take a really long time. Ideally, you can paint a box of troops over a weekend, but you don't always have time to sit down and paint, or you might not be in the mood to sit and paint. I mean, after a long day at work, would you rather just sit and play a video game, or start working on a DIY project? For me personally, the arts and crafts aspect of Warhammer is why it's so appealing, but I can understand that for a lot of people, the prospect of painting 2,000 points worth of models can be a really intimidating task and would easily be enough to turn someone off from trying it. A Warhammer army is basically a pet. You have to spend a lot of money on it, feed it, get it new toys, bring it out for playtime, and then take it behind the barn and shoot it after it gets bitten by the balance data slate and you can't really fix it. But Kill Team is able to sort of circumnavigate some of those issues, and as such makes it a much easier starting point for new players. Not for nothing, Kill Team is a lot cheaper. Depending on the edition you're playing, you only really need the Kill Team of your choice, the core rules, and that's it for first edition. For second edition, ideally, you would also get the appropriate rulebook for your team. But if you already know someone who plays Kill Team, they probably already have the core rules, so already that's one less purchase you have to make. Even if you don't know someone with the rules, GW has included the core rules for second edition in every single big box release of Kill Team that they've done. So secondhand, the core rules can be surprisingly cheap, which is a phrase I never thought I would use to describe a Games Workshop product. It feels wrong. Additionally, if you know where to look, you can find the rules for a lot of Kill Teams easily available online through unofficial resources. I'm not going to say where exactly, but if you know, you know, and if you Google Kill Team 2nd Edition rules online, it's the first result. As far as the cost of model kits go, Kill Teams are usually priced in the $60 to $65 range, with a few stragglers in the $55 and $70 range. Now, you're probably going, Zosh, what the fuck? That doesn't sound any cheaper than a regular box of Warhammer minis. But keep in mind that these teams are a one-time purchase. When you get a Kill Team, that isn't just another squad for an army you're amassing. Every model you need to play is in that one box. Now, you do still have to assemble and paint them, but it isn't really that big of a deal since it's just one Kill Team. Since most Kill Teams are only around 10 models, it's much less of a commitment to paint a Kill Team than it is to paint a regular Warhammer army. If you're committed enough, you can knock it out over a weekend. Maybe make it a day to hang out with a friend and do some painting. If said friend is already into the hobby, then you might not even need to get your own tools or paint. And of course, there's Tabletop Simulator, which is what I use to record all the gameplay footage for this video. Tabletop Sim is $20, but frequently goes on sale for much less than that, and I recommend it if you want to play Kill Team right now with as little financial investment as possible on your end. But for me, Tabletop Sim is definitely not my preferred way to play. It just isn't the same as playing a game face-to-face with an opponent and physically moving your pieces across a board. It doesn't help that Tabletop Sim is also a little bit janky as well. I recommend it as a try before you buy option, but with a little caveat that you probably should be playing Kill Team with physical models. I mean, part of the appeal of tabletop wargaming is the tabletop. You get to have a fun game and meet new people, maybe make some friends, and without the physical tabletop, you're just playing a really slow RTS. Speaking of physical tabletop, another big benefit that Kill Team has is that it lets Games Workshop focus on models that are far more niche than the standard armies of 40k allow. One of the big draws of Warhammer is that it has a ton of factions, and no matter what you like, Warhammer probably has something for you. Do you like the Brotherhood of Steel from Fallout or the Spartans from Halo? Then you'll probably like Space Marines. Are you a fan of the general vibe that Mad Max and Borderlands have? Then the Orcs are probably the army for you. Do you want to tear your enemies asunder with demons and black magic? Well then get yourself sized for a cloak made of human skin and some spiky armor because you'll probably love chaos. And if you're into the weird red flag parts of history and Sabaton t-shirts that are a size too small, then you already play Imperial Guard. Generally speaking, if there's something you like, you'll probably be able to find a Warhammer army that is perfectly tailored for you. But there's a small problem with that. There are some Warhammer factions that are really cool and really appeal to a lot of people, but don't have an army and wouldn't really work as an army. For example, one of my favorite factions is the Inquisition. I think they're incredibly cool, and yes, most of that does come from playing a frankly obscene amount of Dark Heresy and Darktide. But the Inquisition doesn't really have an army. Okay, well technically they do have 3, but none of them are really what I think of when I think of the Inquisition. 2 of them are different flavors of Space Marines, 1 of them is really more the Ecclesiarchy's thing, and none of them are the parts of the Inquisition that I personally find cool. I really like the whole Shadow War element of the Inquisition, with agents skulking around in the alleyways and backstreets being a motley crew that's forced to work together. Something like that is kind of really hard to make work on an army-wide scale. The closest you really get is Death Watch, and even then, they all have the universal common ground as Space Marines. So really, it's just a Space Marine army, but for people who have a fear of commitment. But Kill Team works a lot better for the Inquisition, since the Inquisition usually operates on the scale of a small strike team rather than a massive army anyways, sometimes with support being provided by stormtroopers. And I think the Inquisitorial Agents Kill Team captures the vibe I wanted perfectly. Each one of them looks so different from one another that they really capture that feeling of being strange bedfellows. They even have rules for taking operatives from other kill teams as a support option. It isn't just the Inquisition that gets this treatment. Kill Team allows GW to focus more on smaller factions rather than having to make something into its own army. I have no clue how you'd make something like the Adeptus Arbites or Eldar Corsairs work as their own army. Hell, Games Workshop gave up on making the Harlequins their own thing and just lumped them in with the rest of the elves. I doubt they'd want to or be able to make what is at best a sub-faction work as their own fleshed out army. I mean, unless they're Space Marines, of course. But kill teams are more allowed to be their own thing, much to their benefit. Navy Breachers, Traitor Guard, and the Exaction Squad get to flourish in a system like Kill Team, where they wouldn't even get a chance to shine nearly as brightly in 40k. Even the ones that are just upgrade sprues are still pretty cool. The Hand of the Archon kit is a great way to add more personality to the already excellent Drukhari sculpts. And the upcoming Night Lord's kill team looks so good. I don't care that it's just an upgrade sprue, man. I want it now. I want to be midnight clad so bad. Ave Dominus Nox! But even though they're their own thing, many kill teams can still be used in regular games of 40k. Hell, some kill teams are even created explicitly to replace old 40k kits, like the Commandos, Mandrakes, and Striking Scorpions. Because I'm an idiot, I'm fielding an army composed almost entirely of the Deathcore kill team for my guard, and a lot of the other kill teams are able to be used in a similar way for their respective factions, with them either having dedicated 40k rules or able to be easily proxied as another unit. If you wanted to, you could easily run the Void-Scarred Corsairs for all your troops and make an Eldar Corsair-themed army, or use the Farstalker Band in your Carnivore squads for some extra variation in your Kroot. Additionally, if you don't like the options that GW gives you, many kill teams are really easy to make into your own thing. If for whatever reason you don't like the Kriegers that are the default veteran guardsman team, it's really easy to use some Cadians instead. You may have to dip into the command squad for some bits, as well as the Cadian upgrade sprue, which seems almost purpose-made for kill team construction, but you can absolutely do it. And there's plenty of third-party options out there as well. And even though I sung the praises of the Inquisitorial kill team earlier, I personally plan on converting the recent Saviors of Cinderfall Age of Sigmar kit into an Inquisition kill team. I mean, yeah, it's a good kit, but, you know, Saviors of Cinderfall has a guy in a fancy hat. And is it really the Inquisition if it's not being led by a guy in a fancy hat? But even if you're not actively converting stuff, if you already have an existing Warhammer army, it can be pretty easy to make a kill team out of the units you already have. If you already have 2,000 points of Chaos Space Marines, you can probably make just about every operative in the Legionnaires kill team without buying any new kits. Maybe some bits, but that's about it. Same goes for just about every kill team with the exception of like maybe Gellerpox Infected, but if you already play 40k, you can really easily dip your toes into kill team without dipping further into your wallet. And the reason you'd want to do that is because, man, kill team is just really fun. I'm serious, compared to big games of 40k, Kill Team is the most madcap, fast-paced fun I've had on the tabletop. I'm not saying that I don't enjoy games of Warhammer 40k, but the bigger games can really start to feel like a slog after a while. In a standard game of 40k, players each get their own turn per round. A player gets to move, shoot, charge, and fight until all their units have acted, and then their opponent gets to take their turn and do the same. This means that a full 2k point game can have turns that go so slow depending on what armies are in play. If you're playing like Custodes versus Chaos Knights, then, I don't know, you can probably finish up in like an hour or two. But if you're playing something like Tyranids versus Orcs, then turn 2 should finish up roughly around the heat death of the universe. Also, I don't want to sound super salty, but I've had some games of 40k where I've just straight up stopped having a good time after my opponent's first turn. Whether that be because I just start off on the wrong foot with my first turn and don't really accomplish much, or because some armies are just infuriating to play against. I hate Tyranids, I hate Tyranids, I hate Tyranids! There's nothing that sucks out the enthusiasm for a game more like getting steamrolled right out of the gate before you can really do anything to counter it. It sets an unfortunate tone for the rest of the game that it's going to be an absolute one-sided slaughterfest. But in my opinion, Kill Team has this problem a lot less, mostly due to how Kill Team handles turns. Instead of players each getting their own turn, players instead alternate turns. So player 1 activates and uses an operative, and then player 2 activates and uses an operative. This goes back and forth until the round is over. This makes games of Kill Team feel a lot more active and engaging. Player turns don't last as long as they do in 40k, and as such it never really feels like a slog. Typically you don't find yourself sitting around with your phone out waiting for someone to finish their turn in Kill Team. As a result, Kill Team feels a lot faster paced and is able to take on this sort of chaotic madcap energy to it that makes it really fun to play. Points quickly shift control, operatives live and die on a razor's edge, and each side relies on a volatile combination of both strategy and dumb luck to accomplish their mission. Now that's Kill Team. In one of my games, I was able to suss out a plan that my opponent had set up due to his placement of a Daka Boy. So, rather than let that slide, I decided to nip it in the bud and introduce the Daka Boy to my good friend, Mr. Melta, who hits, pretty fucking hard. 4 attacks, hitting on 4s. One of those is a crit. Yeah, 2 others hit. AP 2, and the crit is Modern Warfare 4.
I think he's just dead.
I think so, yeah.
But I'm assuming that's more than 10 damage.
Yeah, each one of the shots from the Melta gun does 6 damage. 3 on a crit, but 4 of those are mortal wounds.
Jesus Christ.
So that's 12, 15, 19 damage.
Yeah, that's a melta gun for you.
Yeah.
God damn.
And I was so proud of my tactical brilliance in that game that I dedicated way too much time in a YouTube video to brag about it to my relatively small audience. You're welcome. And even when a strategy doesn't work out in your favor, it can still be pretty funny. In another one of my test games that I played, I desperately needed to get a commando off the objective. So I had my demolitions veteran plant a mine to clear the point. Now, I had some guardsmen in range, but I figured, hey, what's a little friendly fire in order to clear the line and completely open it for the taking? Well, not only did I successfully manage to kill 2 of my guardsmen, I didn't even scratch the orc. And for my troubles, my opponent activated that orc his very next turn and immediately killed my demolitions expert. But hey, he got off the objective to kill me. Look, any moron with a gun can have a friendly fire incident, but only a true tactical genius on my level can have one with a 300% mortality rate. Now, Kill Team isn't the most perfect game out there, and I certainly have my complaints with it. Like how Games Workshop ditched proper tape measures for movement and instead decided to go with colored shapes, because apparently we're all in kindergarten. There's also how the miniature design team seems to be operating on the philosophy of, when in doubt, release a guard kill team, with us now having 3 of the bastards, or 4, depending on how charitable you're feeling about Navy breachers. Actually, make that 5, because I had to rewrite and re-record this bit after Adepticon, where we saw another guard kill team with Brood Brothers. Yeah, I know they're Gene Stealer cults, but they're on Cadian bodies. It's guard kill team number 5. Come on, guys. Meanwhile, factions like Tyranids and Mechanicus still don't have a proper team when they've been waiting for one since release. Mechanicus at least has the Hunter-Clade White Dwarf team, but if you're a Nids player, I sure hope you like the Kill Team Compendium because you'll be using it an awful lot. And also, some of the recent Kill Teams just feel kinda phoned in. Space Marine Scouts, Striking Scorpions, and Mandrakes are all clearly just 40k releases that have been packaged for Kill Team, as they lack the customization options that most Kill Team kits have. Someone at GW obviously just slapped Kill Team on their box and then just took the afternoon off. Sometimes I kinda wish that Kill Team had the same level of support that Age of Sigmar's Warcry has. Warcry has a ton of teams, and almost every Age of Sigmar faction has a team for Warcry, and on top of that, the core rules for Warcry are also free. Wait, why am I not playing Warcry? But at the end of the day, I still really like Kill Team. At its core, it is a ton of fun, and I hope that if you were on the fence about it, maybe I helped convince you to try it out. I think that GW is honestly kind of sleeping on it, since I think that they have an absolute gem on their hands. It just might need a little more polish to it that could be added with a new edition. I think Kill Team is a perfect game that appeals to both casual fans as well as hardcore competitive players. It's a great game for just hanging out with your buddies, having a few drinks, and rolling some dice without needing to get too deep into the game and playing for too long. It's the ideal beer hammer experience. But for competitive players that want it, there's plenty of strategy and depth to be found in Kill Team, and it's been a prominent feature in pretty much every Warhammer tournament, whether that be LVO or Adepticon. Oh, and speaking of Adepticon, if you played Kill Team there, you were actually playing on a historical site. You see, the room that they had set up the Kill Team tables in is actually the same room as the DashCon Ball Pit. You were on cursed ground and didn't even know it, like a house built upon a native burial site, except even more disturbing. And with a faint stench of urine in the air.